I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 21, and let's focus on verses 1 through 7. The Lord came to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the appointed time God had told him. Abraham named his son who was born to him, the one Sarah bore to him, Isaac. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, "God has made me laugh, and everyone who hears will laugh with me." She also said, "Who would have told Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age." Genesis 21, verses 1 through 7. God fulfills his covenant promises. And that's the theme of today's chapter. Whether his promises are to his people, like Abraham and Sarah, or to the Gentiles like Hagar and Ishmael, God is faithful to his word. And we learn faithfulness by experiencing his faithfulness, often through trials which can only be endured by God's intervention. In my life, I've faced difficulty and I've cried out to God. And in my desperation, I wanted to hear God say, "Oh, I'll take care of it immediately." Most often, though, I've heard him come back say, "Trust me." That's not the same as "I'll take care of it immediately." And then there'll be silence for what seems like an eternity. And then the heat would continue to grow and I'd be an emotional wreck. And still that echo, "Trust me." I would struggle, I would groan, I would cry and wail, but eventually God made good on his promises. And after all these years as a believer, I've only just begun to learn to patiently wait on the Lord. I've only begun to take him at his word because I don't understand his timing. And I'm learning to trust him, just like you are. Learning to distinguish his voice from that of the impersonator. You know, as a child, I remember this great impersonator on television named Rich Little. He was on all the variety shows. And I recall closing my eyes and thinking, this guy sounds exactly like, and you just put a celebrity's name in there. But then there were subtleties in the voices of those people that Mr. Little impersonated. And those subtleties could probably just be clearly distinguished by the friends of the celebrity being impersonated. Are you so close to God and to his word that you can distinguish his voice among the impersonators? Because there's a lot of people out there promising hope that aren't the Lord. Apparently, Sarah knew the Lord's voice when she heard it, because upon hearing it, she faithfully waited for the Lord to fulfill his promise. Hebrews 11, verses 11 and 12. By faith, Sarah, even Sarah herself, when she was barren, received power to conceive offspring, even though she was past her age, since she considered that the one who had promised was faithful. And therefore, from one man, in fact, from one as good as dead, came offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven and as innumerable as the grains of sand by the seashore. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 11 and 12. So who knows how much faith that Sarah had when she first heard the Lord? But I'm certain that her faith ballooned when the Lord delivered on his word. So let's take today's chapter as a challenge to continue seeking God's word and to rely on it. And that way we can rest in his promises until we rejoice in their fulfillment. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Check us out at groundworksministries.com.